Hello and welcome to the UK Creative Festival. Our next guests are disruptors and innovators in so many different fields of creativity. We are really excited to welcome Simon Pegg and Nils Leonard.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Who else was dancing in here last night? Because I walked in and had a shiver of, ugh. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure, thank you.
Jez told us he was going to do a power intro, and he basically just came on and walked off. So I take it everybody knows the brilliant Mr. Pegg and what he's achieved. Someone last night said, and this probably couldn't go any further, he's a genuine polymath, not like that Hollywood actor who does loads of stuff and it's all shit. Which I thought was awesome. So thanks for talking to me.
When you told me that story, you told me who the Hollywood actor was, but you were very discreet then by not mentioning
I was trying.
the name.
Am I allowed? Fuck it. James Franco. We all know that guy's deal. I don't give a fuck. Brilliant. Well, thanks for coming. Look, I'm going to try to make this. I hate these ones where everyone asks you the same old shit, so if you feel bored by it or whatever, but also try and make this useful. Creative Circle's like a brilliant, brilliant thing. This festival's a brilliant thing, and I kind of want it to make sense for creatives, really. And you've smashed that entire world, and I'd love to just unpick some of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. So, opening question, I think there's like people will say, what's your creative process? What I want to know is, where's it come from? How do you get to the good stuff? What's your day like? What do you do?
Fuck knows. It's a difficult one, I guess. I mean, you know, creativity is hard to define and is slightly intangible. I guess you put yourself in situations where you have to be creative because you set yourself a goal, which is a screenplay or whatever, and then you sit down and you know you have to go from where you are to that point, you know, and that's when it has to sort of come, and you can't really force it. I find it's difficult to just sort of sit down and start. Although, as I said to you earlier on, you know, when you write a first draft of anything, whether it's a pitch or a book or a screenplay, a play, your first job is to write the shittest possible version of what you're going to do, because it gives you the least pressure on yourself. You know, you're just going to vomit everything up, all your ideas onto the page, and make the worst possible. That's your goal, is to write the worst possible version. I think the first draft that we wrote of Hot Fuzz was like 220 pages long, and it was rubbish. And that's what we then had to sort of like whittle down, and then you work on it and work on it and work on it. And so you kind of inspire yourself in increments in a way.
I love that. I mean, there's so much pressure in what we all do. You know, we work for clients, we work for bosses. There's this sense of fear, I think, around it all. And I love what you're saying, which is just vomit out the worst possible thing. It can't possibly get worse. So yeah. Everything is a move forwards from that point.
The blank page is very scary, you know, starting from a point of having nothing at all to focus on is terrifying and stressful. And so the best thing to do is de-stress the entire situation by reducing the amount of expectations you have on yourself. Don't try and write a masterpiece straight away.
Yeah, brilliant. You sort of implied something which just dawned on me, is like we all work for people. And in some ways, you guys sit down and go, we're just going to do this thing. We're just going to write Hot Fuzz, or, you know. I kind of always believed, weirdly, that deadlines and pressure in those briefs kind of aid us in some way. Do you apply those to yourself?
Oh yeah, always. I mean, when I write with Edgar Wright, Edgar's the sort of the disciplinarian, like he keeps us on track and stuff. And it's funny because then when I write with Nick Frost, I take on that role. But yeah, we do. We try and set ourselves goals. It's important to have those kind of pressures on you a little bit, even though they can be a little stressful. It does help, because if you're shy about doing something, if you're just feeling a little bit, if your confidence is low, it just forces you to be proactive.
Yeah, I think that's right. Do you all I can apply it to are the companies we work in, right? So everyone talks about culture a hell of a lot in our game. You know, what's the culture of your company?
Yeah.
You've got to have presumably cultures of the teams you build, right? You and Nick or whatever. Do you think a lot about that, or do you just start doing what you do and hope it's all right and no one's a dickhead?
Yeah, I mean, we're all dickheads, really, in a way. But yeah, we can't. It's interesting when I write with Edgar. we have our creative team we have Naira Park, our producer, and then higher up we have Eric Fellner and Tim Bevan at Working Title, who are our kind of dads. And then beyond that, there's Universal, but they rarely sort of get involved in a way. Whereas when I wrote Star Trek for Paramount, it was the bigwigs were much, much closer to us, and that was a much more a strict creative environment.
So you had clients?
Hey?
You had clients?
Yes, exactly. And they were quite strict. And Doug Jung and I wanted to write our Star Trek movie, and I got a little antsy at times because, I wasn't allowed to sometimes.
What's the worst bit of feedback they gave you?
I suppose it wasn't so much feedback as you have to do this. It was a high pressure gig because we were 6 months out from production when we started writing, because they'd had a script, they decided not to use it, they went back to the drawing board, and they said, we've got a space station and we've got this, we're kind of building this, if you can put that in the story, great. But they were knocking on the door all the time saying, how many fighters do we need? How many phases does this, and we didn't know at that point, and it was kind of maddening. And then towards the end of the process, they said, we're going to get some other writers in to sort of do a fresh eyes pass. And I could not believe that. I was so angry. The fucking nerve of them to think, and it's as a writer in Hollywood, you are the lowest of the low, basically. You are, if you see a writer's name on a movie, they might not have written a word of that film, because it gets rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. But it was funny because what happened was they brought these other writers in, and then Justin Lin, who was the director, he would tell us what they'd written, and then we'd rewrite the scene to give to Justin, and Justin would then present that as his notes. So we were like doing I shouldn't say this really, Paramount will kill me. It's years ago, it's fine. So we were kind of like maneuvering around these, they were financial creative decisions about scaling down stuff. It's hard when you have a vision and you want it to be realized in 100%, and then you come up against budgets and stuff like that, which is always boring. But it was an interesting experience.
You're about to swap some clients for some other clients. You've become a director, which is awesome. I'm super pumped about it in the ad world, obviously, a new intake of energy and talent. What I wanted to do was build a promo for this talk, where Simon and I may have been on Zoom, and we were joined by our clients for feedback, which I thought would have been good. But I mean, in some ways, can you just talk about that? Like, why would you, because in our world, right, everyone's like, I want to get out of advertising and become a fucking screenwriter, that's the dream. Yeah. You're like, they're the lowest of the low in Hollywood. We're scrabbling for that job, dude. So I'm, why have you done this? Why are you doing it?
Because I feel like the creative space at the moment, the whole, the landscape's changed so much in the last 5 years, let alone 10 years. And these are short films that are being made. I want to direct features, absolutely, but I'm not so arrogant or overconfident that I could walk into a feature film right now. I want to be able to sort of move around in a more sort of flexible and imaginative space, and I think that is very much here. There's room to kind of experiment and to try things out, and then take those skills on later on. That's not to suggest that this is anyway some sort of, lower rung of a ladder. It's just a different area, And so I felt like, in the same way that, I think like Ridley Scott, he started off directing commercials, and the sort of teeth-cutting era for directors became then music promos, and now I think it's gone back to commercials again now. I have friends who are directors who will, direct commercials in between features because it just keeps them limber, and it's a nice space to sort of play in, And so that felt like the right thing for me.
Oh, brilliant, it's great. I mean, I was just working with James Marsh on something. He's obviously a really good director, and he talks about actually the joy of it being 3 days, a quick edit, in and out. It's not this year and a half odyssey of pain, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that idea. I've just spent a year on Mission Impossible 7. 3 days sounds like a dream to me. That would be awesome.
I love that you do Mission Impossible 7. This is like insane. What's your dream brief then? What's the ad? Tell me, the script comes in on an email, we've got it for you.
I don't know. It's interesting because it would have to be the right thing. Like, I would never do alcohol, or because I'm sober. There are things, obviously you want to have some sort of connection to the product or the idea or whatever you call it. Feel like you can relate to it in some way and support it. So something that was in line with my own ideologies and beliefs, I suppose.
We talked to that a bit. I wang on a lot about our company at Uncommon, and we're attempting to not contribute to the landfill of shit advertising. Is it important to do good in what you do?
I think so. I get you sometimes people that were with me back in the age of Spaced and early days will go, "Oh, you're a sellout," and I always blanch at that because I've never sold out. For selling out, just because I get paid more these days, a lot, doesn't mean I've sold out because selling out is doing something for money which is contrary to your own sort of standards and beliefs. I think if you did something which you disagreed with, like if I took a big check to advertise whiskey, I would be a sellout. Do you know what I mean? Because drink is evil. Not for everybody, for me.
Yep.
That's, I can't remember what the question was. I was just trying to tell
Kind
you
of
I'm
about-
not a sellout, okay?
Well, I'll ask it a different way. I went to this conference once in Germany. They don't fuck about over there. And they had this exercise for creatives where they had these blank gravestones drawn on a wall. Anyone ever played that? Blank gravestones. And you had to go up there and write on it, your thing. Someone joked and then wrote content solutions. I was like, you're not going to want to put content solutions on your epitaph.
My favorite was Spike Milligan's grave says, "I told you I was ill."
So, but is there a sense that do you want to leave something where people go, fuck, that guy did that stuff? Is that a...
Yeah, obviously, the greatest achievement I think you can hope for as a creative is that your creations persist, and really in the film world, there's a lot of emphasis on box office, opening weekend, but really the most important thing is that 20 years later, people are still talking about that film. There are films that, had a huge box office weekend that no one remembers now, and I would rather be known for something that is talked about than something that is materially successful in the moment. And so, yeah, it is. And as a creator, you want to make things which have an effect and become influential or remain in the.
Is there a trick to that?
I don't know if it's a trick. I think it's about just making good stuff. Trying to find that kernel of inspiration that creates something which is truly memorable and effective and makes people think.
This is a cruel question. What's the best idea you've ever had?
The best idea of it, there was a pizza one night I had that I was really hungry and that was definitely that. I don't know. It's probably Edgar Wright and I were on the set of Spaced in 1999 and we were shooting a sequence where I was fighting zombies in the game Resident Evil, and we had a really good time. And Edgar and I turned to each other and said, "Hey, we should make a zombie movie." So that was probably the best idea we ever had.
Fair. Read this thing by Virgil Abloh, the creative director guy, and he said in his world he called it a hack, but he said it's amazing how many people don't think about their thing. So what they bring to a brief or a problem or whatever, and obviously his is quite clear when you look at the stuff he does. Have you thought about your thing in terms of directing? Have you got a flavor? Edgar does, right? A bit,
Yeah. Edgar has a very specific kind of visual style, which is much sort of emulated, but he's had it since he was 15, younger probably. I've seen all his movies, the ones that he made on VHS and Cine, and it was there from the beginning, this really kinetic. And for him, it comes from a love of Sam Raimi and the Coen brothers, and understanding how the camera can be as big a communicator as the script or the actors, or the way that the camera moves, the editing, all that stuff is part of the language of cinema. And it can sometimes be forgotten. Sometimes you point the camera at the actors and they do the job, or the script is particularly good and that does the job. But Edgar knows that filmmaking is a hugely inclusive process of a lot of processes. But I don't know, I just want to tell stories efficiently, and that sounds boring as fuck. I just want to tell stories efficiently. No, I just want to be dynamic, and I love visual storytelling. And I've been working on Mission Impossible, working with Chris McQuarrie a lot, and just learning about lens sizes, which is just so fascinating about what a different lens will tell you about what a person is thinking. You can put a 40 on somebody and nothing, and then you put a higher, a wider lens on them, and suddenly they're thinking something, and you put a lower one on, and suddenly they've got a secret, and it's, all these tools that you have.
Can you edit?
I can edit, yeah.
We talk, like, there's a thing in our industry, which is the more senior you get, the less on the tools you are, which I've always found to be terrifying, because you become completely dependent. And when you talk about great film, or Edgar in particular, right, the edit's a part of his process.
Very much, and Edgar's always in the edit. I mean, he has Chris Dickens or Paul Matchless editing for him, but he's always there. And I know the difference a frame can make, when you're editing, particularly with comedy or anything that requires dramatic timing, whether it's comedic timing or whatever. You take a couple of frames out of a scene, and suddenly it will sing in a different key, and that's vital. Really vital.
Favorite directors apart from Edgar, of course?
I mean, probably Spielberg, and I know, Steven Spielberg is a big sort of entertainer, but there's something incredibly precise and literate about the way he directs, which I love. He really understands how the camera can tell the story, and he's opted to make big entertaining movies a lot of the time, and occasionally he'll show you what a serious adult he is, but he's a big kid at heart. But growing up watching his movies and getting to work with him as well and seeing him doing it, it was just an absolute privilege, and I love him. I always want to cuddle him when I see him.
I think the whole world feels like that.
It's quite awkward sometimes, because...
What, you and him?
Yeah, because I just really want to cuddle him all the time.
Have you ever done it?
Yeah. Because I feel like so grateful to him, And he's also someone who will talk about his career in a way that isn't crowing. Like, he's got every right to just talk about himself all the time. But if you, between shots on Tintin or Ready Player One, and you just say, "Oh, what was Close Encounters of the Third Kind like, Stephen?" And they'll just tell you, and you get these amazing stories about, his life and his process. And
talk about something slightly weird. Have you manifested your life? You were a kid, bang into zombies, sci-fi, whatever, had these dreams, drew,
Yeah.
And now you've written a Star Wars, like what? Like, you
Yeah.
know.
A little bit, yeah. There's been a lot of
yeah.
circularity in that way, yeah.
I kind of want to talk about that because I don't know, man. A lot of creatives have that'll never happen for me.
Yeah.
Or can't see it, maybe. I don't know.
It's funny. I remember when I had quite a complex relationship. This is going to get personal now. I had quite a complex relationship with my stepdad. And I remember one time when I was 10, he said to me, "All right, we've got two choices tonight. You can either go to the cinema, we go see this new film called Raiders of the Lost Ark, or we can go at the fair and go on all the rides and stuff like that." And I remember thinking, he wants to go at the cinema, and I need to please this guy because I don't think he likes me very much. So I'm going to go to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. Of course, it was the best thing to do. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the first time I ever met Steven Spielberg, he was the first person I rang to say, "Guess who I just hung out with," And that kind of realization of childhood sort of fantasy has happened a lot for me. Being on the set of Star Wars, writing, helping J.J. write some bits of The Force Awakens, because J.J. Abrams always likes to riff ideas. And I wrote a little scene that's in the Force Awakens, and and Star Trek as well. I used to love Star Trek as a kid, and suddenly finding myself that it is a particularly incredible moment, and it was for me, to be in a scene with Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, and it's hard to describe what it's like to talk to a character that you've known as a child, not the actor, but the character. And I was in the middle of a scene talking to fucking Mr. Spock, and he was talking about, "You are Montgomery Scott," and all this. And in my head, I was just screaming like a baby because it wasn't Leonard, it was Spock. He was with ears, and he was talking to me, and it was one of the most extraordinary manifestations of my life.
I really believe in that, and I think sometimes it can sound weird to people, but I wish more of us, particularly in this country, we have this weird cynicism, don't we, around success or around our dreams. You know, it's a very innately American thing to go, I'm going to go and chase my dream. But in Britain, we're like, yeah, probably never happen. And I would love more of us to learn from that, I think, creatively. Can we, I don't want to get all political or whatever, but you're a really powerful force for creativity from the UK. You know, I think that's massively important now. How do you feel about creativity in the UK?
I think we're an incredibly creative nation, you know. I mean, we have, such a huge pool of talent, and we always have done musically, culturally. I mean, we make a huge noise for a little island in the North Sea. There are bigger countries out there who don't do as much as we do, you know, and are brilliant for other reasons. But, you know, in terms of music and theatre, film, I'm really proud to be British, not in a, you know...
Same. Art cuts.
Yeah.
Art cuts are rubbish. No, I'm talking to the funding, really, and our government's view of it a bit, which is, I've found it incredibly, not just frustrating, but like borderline moronic, that you would look at probably our last great industry.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so important. I mean, it's so important for us culturally in terms of our sort of national morale and stuff. You know, it's something we're really good at. I think the government, in that respect, just take it for granted. You know, they just think, it doesn't matter. Maybe because it comes so easy to us. Maybe because we are a font of amazing creativity. But it's stupid that it's not fostered.
Yeah,
it is moronic that it's not fostered.
Good. Print that everywhere, anyone. So, bit of advice. Say you're, 22, you've done a bit of uni, you've come out, you're desperate for work. The ad industry's here, the film industry's here. More than that, what advice would you give that person if they want to be a successful creative?
Chase it. Absolutely chase it. Don't wait for it to come to you. Don't expect it to come to you. No matter how talented you are or know you are or think you are, chase it. And because not everybody will. And that will immediately put you at the head of the pack if you're after it, you know? If you're on your feet and you're going places and you're annoying people and you're writing letters or you're putting your content up on YouTube, it's a great time to be a creative right now because so many middlemen have fallen in the wake of the internet in terms of you can make a little short movie and put it online and, if you can get eyes on it and get it to go viral, which happens to the weirdest things, doesn't it? I mean, cats and babies, they just do it like that. I mean, how do they do it? Ask them. But, you get eyes on your little movie or your little film and someone thinks, oh, they're good, or chase ADing or whatever, or getting on a film set in whatever capacity or into an agency or whatever. Just be proactive and don't kind of sit back ever, because that's when other people will just drift past you because they're hungrier than you are. Be hungry.
Brilliant. At the other end of the spectrum, because I think a lot of people ask that question, advice for a young person, advertising is terrible with age. Like, we're really bad. No one is old in our game. Does anyone notice that? Where did the elves, they fucking disappear. Hey, Miss Maguire. No, but I want to talk to it a bit because it dawned on me that you can get old as a rock star and be cool, Iggy, whatever. Yeah. You can get old in the film world and be cool. What's that about in our world? Why can't you? Do you think we can? Let's talk about that for a second.
I don't know, and maybe it's because of zeitgeist. Maybe it's because I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she makes me feel old because she's just so with it and so kind of on it all the time. And I look to her for my coolness now because, I know what I like, but I'm a little bit set in my ways, as a lot of us do get as we get older. I think it's very important if you are going to get old, and a lot of us will, then you have to kind of stay in contact with what's current and what's new and not rely on your old tricks. You have to be an old dog who can be taught new tricks, I think is the point. Tilly, my daughter, she got into BTS, she got into K-pop and stuff, and I'm an old indie kid, goth, you know, and I'm like, I don't want to listen to that crap, you know, it's all pop, I don't like pop. And she's, no, Dad, listen to this song, listen to this song, listen to this. I fucking love K-pop now, I really do. I've got a massive crush on Jimin. It's just, I can't get enough of it.
Please make your debut a K-pop video.
I would definitely do that. Just to hug Jimin would be great.
You're a hugger, dude.
I am a hugger. They're so beautiful and cute. I know, she's got me all fluid and everything. But I think the danger is that you stop in terms of your creative awareness and you stick to what you know. And as such, younger people come up underneath and they're all buzzing with new stuff and new ideas and, you know, they're on the vanguard and you stop being on the vanguard. And people, particularly in advertising, I think, want to work with fresh ideas because you're constantly trying to outdo the last wave or do something new. And so you have to be plugged into the new. And the young people are, and we ain't.
Yeah, true. What's the biggest failure? What's the worst idea you've had?
Start a production company. I think that was more like, oh, that's a job. You know, I play for a living. My job is to mess around and, you know, and then I've suddenly got to start having pitch meetings and doing all that kind of stuff. So I don't love that side of it particularly. But
I'm sort of trying to get to, though, have you ever looked at something and gone, oh, fuck that up? Or, you know, because a lot rides on, you know, when you're making ads, we make a lot of stuff all at once. And
yeah.
Constantly trying to keep it good, but you don't really know. And then a bit like a movie, right? It all disappears off, and then you hope it's going to be all right.
Yeah, and also you have to, you hand it over to a lot of other people as well, you know. There's so much about, you know, music is 50% of the effect of anything that is scored. You know, you can have an amazing piece of storytelling, cinematography, editing, acting. You put some shit music on that and it's rubbish.
100.
Yeah. So, I don't know. There are things that I've done that I look at and think, yeah. But then that's most of it. You know, you always have a little bit of, I could have done that. Could have done that differently. I'm very self-critical, so.
You talked to them, or I read somewhere that you were like, you've got to be able to do it all. And, you know, edit, shoot, whatever, because the best films, you said something like the best films are made by people that can do it all. There's a lot of talk of collaboration in our game. You know, do you run a collaborative culture and do you run this and that? But it's at odds, isn't it, really, with control, some of it.
Yeah, it can be tough. I think you need to work with people you can trust, and you just need to have your hand in every facet of it, you know, because once someone else takes over, it stops being yours. I think that's one of the hardest things in creativity is when you have your idea and then it suddenly becomes someone else's thing, and then they can turn it into whatever they like, and then it becomes something that you didn't intend it to be, and then it belongs to nobody, you know? Yeah. So just being politely insistent that you can be there at every phase of the process is important.
Got it. In our game as well, and I mean a lot of places because of COVID and lockdown, it's brilliant what we do, making up stuff, but we work really, really hard, work very long hours, mostly because I think we love it and we get addicted to it and we can't let it go and all that stuff, but life suffers, or can suffer. You know, there are all sorts of tricks. I learned about my marriage when, you know, I started to get more senior. I was like, oh my God, I actually have to invent some boundaries for myself, otherwise Charlotte will just bin me. You learned some stuff there. You're probably one of the busiest people alive, aren't you? I mean...
In lockdown?
Well, just in general. How do you keep your life and your family and all that stuff?
Well, that is the most important thing to me, is my family. My job is I'm very lucky to do the job I do, and I love it. And you know, the best advice I ever got was find the thing that you love to do and get paid for it, and that's what I've managed to do. But ultimately, the most important thing to me is my home life and my family. And I always put that first, you know. I think it will, because you can't get any of it back if you're off months on end, you know, particularly when you have kids, because they grow so quickly. You know, they're into Blackpink, and 3 months later they're into BTS, and so you've got to be with them, you know. So that for me has always been preserve that element of my life, and everything else will fall into place. Like, I try not to be away for longer than, at the very most, 5 weeks. or at least take them with me if I can, because you need your sanity as well. You know, you need the rock to hang on to, because otherwise you're just out there, job to job, and it can feel a little, you know.
Thank you very much. Look, I think find the thing you love and get paid for it's a wicked place for me to shut up.
Yeah.
I've also run out. Thanks, man. I would love to open it up for some questions, if anyone has any. I don't know. There was a hashtag. Did you hear about the hashtag, by the way, just before? So there was a hashtag that they had that then was appropriated as a centerfold hashtag and then got populated with boobs. So I don't know if that's worked.
I'm happy to take questions about my boobs.
Hello.
Okay.
Apparently I have to stand up, so that's quite embarrassing. You said you're self-critical, and I'm exactly the same. And currently working on my first short, and it's driving me insane how critical I'm being. Do you have any advice on just like getting it across the line to a point where you know that you're going to be happy the day on set and not burst into tears in the toilet?
Well, bursting into tears in the toilet is a given, really. That's going to happen at some point anyway. I think be self-critical, but be reasonable. You know, don't be too hard on yourself. I mean, being self-critical, there's a difference between watching something that you finish and thinking, oh, I'm rubbish, or you know, in the creative process thinking I could do that better. There's a point when you can be a little bit too hypercritical of yourself, when you'll get something, you'll shoot something and you'll get it, and you'll think, oh, let's do one more take, and then something else comes up and you do one more take, then you start wasting time, and then that impacts on the rest of your creative process because everything else you want to do is squeezed. So don't be hard on yourself. You know, be self-critical. Don't settle ever. Always be a perfectionist, you know, but within reason. Be a reasonable perfectionist. That's my advice.
Amazing.
Hiya. First of all, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this talk so far. I also want to ask a question about the subjectivity of comedy. So often we get scripts in and someone will have a discussion saying, oh, it doesn't feel funny. And then someone will make changes and send it to someone else and they'll say, that doesn't feel funny. And it's just such an interesting kind of challenge because comedy is so subjective. You've got so many people with such different opinions based on their culture or which era they were brought up in. And obviously now you're at a stage where you've got the experience to say, and the authority to say, yes, it's funny because I'm Simon Pegg and I've written it. But when you're starting out, how do you convince someone that what you've written on the page is going to come across as funny when it's filmed?
It's a hard one, I think. It's hard because, you know, the page is a part of the finished thing. It's not the finished thing. You know, when you read a comedy script, you don't have the performer in there. You don't have the way that the scene is shot in there. You don't have the music in there. So you really are just looking at a joke on a page. And a lot of the time, it's up to the person that's reading it as much as it is up to the person that's written it to have the kind of understanding of comedy, the rhythms of comedy, the vision to see the joke and think, oh yeah, this is good. So it's a puzzle, and I think sometimes it's hard for comedy writers to kind of to get themselves across in a way because they can probably understand exactly what they've written is funny, but it also comes down to the person who's reading it. There is the other side of that, which is that if the person that's reading it doesn't get it, then maybe they're not the person you want to work with anyway. Do you know what I mean? Comedy is very subjective. John Cleese said something very funny once. Said about he said Monty Python fans think that men dressed as old women falling over is funny, whereas I think just old women falling over is funny, and that speaks a lot to the subjectivity of comedy. But there is, you know, there's also universality in comedy. There's a lot of things that we all find funny, and I suppose as a writer you have to find a way to transmit the comedy on the page, and as a creative who's perhaps taking on the script or is adapting it, you have to find a way to read it and understand it. And the best thing to do that is to have a sense of humor. I mean, that's literally what a sense of humor is. It's an understanding of what is funny and why it's funny and how it can be even funnier. You know, a lot of the time, like you say, these things get passed around and they become mushy because it's different voices and it becomes very generic. The funniest comedy, I think, is incredibly personal and often really specific. So yeah, I think it's about who you send it to as much as what you've written. You're welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say thank you for Spaced, particularly, because that just changed my world. And I still laugh with my sister about jokes about that all the time. And also Big Train, I mean, that's pretty far back. And I still think it's bullshit that we're not allowed to masturbate in the office. My question is a real quick one, to be honest with you. The films that you're producing, you're directing, I don't know how far down the line you are, but will they be based in Britain, in British films? Basically what I'm saying is, can we have you back?
Well, you know, the funny thing is that I'm here, you know, and so much US production takes place here because we have amazing facilities and amazing crews. And, you know, the last 3 or 4 big movies I've made in Watford. You know, I mean, we've gone off to various locations to shoot stuff, but it all kind of takes place here. And I think the film, television, advertising agency, advertising world now, it's all pretty global. You know, I suppose it's about what you make your films about, and I haven't made a British film for a little while. You know, Edgar and I are going to start writing a new movie together, hopefully this year, towards the end of next, you know, to get going, and that will be about us and about here. You know, it'll be a British movie in the same way that Sean and Hot Fuzz and The World's End were resolutely British films. So yeah, we'll do that. But in terms of working here, you know, I'm very lucky in that I do get to work 25 minutes from my house a lot of the time, you know, at Leavesden Studios in Watford, which is a real treat. It's weird actually, because it's obviously 20 years since 9/11 tomorrow, and I was shooting the second series of Big Train when that happened, and we were all watching it on a little portable TV in one of our trailers. And I remember going in to film this sketch about a guy who was at a dinner party who kept striking out with the people he was talking to, trying to sort of like, you know, score with a girl and not succeeding. And I think the second tower went down and I'll never forget that. This is completely not to do with anything, it's just an anecdote, of trying to be funny on camera whilst the world seemed to be ending was quite an extraordinary experience. But there you go.
In the UK, on the subject of funny, I don't know how much you guys will agree, we used to do loads of funny ads. We used to do loads. We're really bad at it now. There's lots of very emotional stuff. You know, you can always think of an ad that's like, oh yeah, and it made me cry a bit, or feel like, oh, family, or...
Yeah, like the Christmas adverts now are like these kind of pics, aren't they?
We've lost our humour though. The Americans kick our ass at that.
At funny
the
commercials.
ads, yeah.
Yeah.
What's that? Beard,
in our funny adverts. Yeah, but sexism's hilarious, come on. We all love it.
It was going so well.
That's irony, by the way. Yeah, I suppose that it's weird because like what we have now is like Go Compare. That's classed as comedy.
I didn't do that. You're cool. No, but a bit of that. I don't know whether your intention is to direct some funny stuff, but please fucking do, because we need it.
Yeah, well, you know. You never
Any
know.
other questions? That's it, I think, isn't it? Are we there? Any other questions? No? All right. Well, then it's just down to me to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, really humbled to speak to you, and I'm sure everyone here really enjoyed your company, so thanks so much.
Not at all. Thanks, Nils.
All right,
Thank
cheers.
you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.